Standing Committee meeting this evening. For the benefit of those people in the audience, we did do some changes to the agenda earlier this evening. So we will be doing item 3 first, item 2 second, and item 1 will be done third on the agenda under items for decision. We also have regrets tonight from 2 student trustees Twesh and Maya will not be here this afternoon. And so we are in open session, and the next thing on our agenda under presentations and delegations is the GSN summary presentation by Superintendent Jeffs, please.
Thanks, Chair Lloyd, and through you. Tonight I'd like to take the opportunity as we build towards the 15-16 budget to just provide a very quick summary of 40-some slides, but I won't be long. In terms of overall financial orientation for trustees, this was provided by the ministry, this presentation in December, and I know there were a number of trustees who were unable to attend that session, so as promised previously, I said I'd come forward at March BNF, and here we are tonight. So I'll do a quick summary of the presentation. Be happy to take any questions, and as we get into the budget more fully, beginning the month of April, we may revert back and draw back upon this presentation for additional information. So if I can get Superintendent Dance is going to drive while I speak. So I think what we, with respect to grants for student needs, the GSN, which is grant, just the acronym for Grants for Student Needs, and this is our funding, is an open-ended entitlement transfer payment program with funding determined by formulas set out in regulation each year. And the real key thing here is that GSN accounts for 90% of our overall funding, with the balance coming forward really in terms of supplementary grants. GSN is generally released prior to the provincial budget, and some people find this unusual, but the ministry receives approval at the provincial level to release before the provincial budget. This is just really a graph about funding relative to enrollment, and if you get a chance to look at the slide in detail, funding has increased approximately 50% over the period from 2002, 2003 through 2014-15. Really 2 sources of funding for education. One is the property tax, and about 30% of the GSN revenue comes from education property tax, with 70%, the remaining 70% coming from the school board operating grant. This is really just a diagram of the funding flow, and we won't spend a whole lot of time looking at it. I believe there's a question.
Oh, sorry, Trustee Law. Sorry, I'm off the
No.
That's okay, I know how exciting GSNs are. Through the chair to Superintendent Jeffs, I just want to clarify, you to clarify. A lot of people think that supporting different school boards has an impact, and I just want to be sure that everyone knows that all of the money goes down to Queen's Park, and then it is distributed as a GSN based on pupils. So it really doesn't matter which school board they support, because all of it is publicly funded. Is that correct?
Superintendent, please.
Yeah, through you, Chair Lloyd, and that is correct. So the money, and in fact, the province now sets the education property tax rate in the province. All the money goes down, and you'll see in slides coming up where I speak to the fact that the GSN is a provincial funding formula, and that each of the boards is accounted for through that funding formula. So you'll see that come up in several slides. Just with respect to the structure of the GSN, all formulas, benchmarks, table amounts, and sub-grants come to us in the form of a technical paper. And just so people are aware, That technical paper is about 150 pages of formulas and benchmarks and table amounts. So it's not a small piece. And then here in Simcoe County, at this board, what we do is basically try to recreate the GSN and through our modeling and those sorts of things. With respect to general structure, there are two foundation grants, which largely make up the GSN. And the one is just really enrollment driven by, it says here cost per student, I would say dollars provided per student, and the school board administration cost, and then 13 special purpose grants. And these special purpose grants allow the GSN to meet the test of equity and fairness in the boards by responding to factors such as board demographics, profiles, individual school locations, specific program take-up, and student special equipment needs. Student special equipment needs. So that's partly where there's some differentiation made. So for instance, boards in the north who are very dispersed in terms of their geographic areas receive some additional resources to help accommodate. Pupil Foundation Grant provides each school board with the same per pupil allocation. So this is the equity piece across the province. So every board is funded at this base rate. And then, however, because of the school foundation grants and special purpose grants, that's where they take care of the equity piece. And for 14-15, per pupil levels are projected to vary across the province by slightly more than $16,800. And so the range per pupil funding in the province of Ontario, as a result of the school foundation grants and special purpose grants, changes the per pupil funding rate from $10,125 to $26,950, with the average in the province being $11,424. With respect to accountability on the funding that we receive, there are legislative requirements, and we're required to file balanced budgets, and we do that on an annual basis. Financial reporting and monitoring, so there's budgeted reporting involved, and many of you may recall the revised estimates that we provided in December of this year. Enveloping of dollars, and that includes formal enveloping for specific allocations like special education, transportation, so there's restrictions on how that money can be spent, and then program grant specific reporting requirements. And that's money that comes from other branches in the ministry, such as safe schools or specialized skills majors. Changes for 14-15, it's interesting because we're about just over halfway through the 14-15 financial year. Our year ends August 31. But it feels a little late to be talking about changes to 14-15 because next month we're going to start talk about all the new things for 15-16. But these are just some of the things that have gone on in 14-15 with respect to the GSN, and I won't go through all the details of those. In the fall, the ministry did hold GSN consultations. A number of the superintendents and the director and associate director were present for those meetings, and they were held by region. So Barrie Region had a meeting in October. Ministry is well represented at those, and it's an opportunity for boards in the Barrie Region to provide input into the 15-16 GSN funding formula. With respect to budgeting and planning, boards are required to have balanced budgets, as I mentioned. There are provisions. The last two bullets cover off provisions for deficits. We don't operate in that area, and so those two bullets aren't really applicable to us. A number of boards in the province are in deficit positions, and as a result have deficit management plans that they're working on in order to get back to a balanced budget position. With respect to balanced budget and accountability, this is really for those who aren't. It talks about the deficit management plan I just referenced. Ultimately, an investigation potentially if they can't work through those, and potentially boards being placed under supervision. With respect to budget development, and you'll see this as I bring the budget forward over the next couple months, but it's a critical task that demonstrates the board's effectiveness and transparency. The budget in Simcoe County does not belong to the Business Services Department, the Director, the respective superintendents are actively involved in the process of preparing 15-16 budgets as we speak. And then there's a lot of conversations that are at mid-council table and before we ultimately bring our budget forward for consideration by the board. So it certainly is a consultative process. I began the process in December with the regional principal at the regional principal meetings, received input from them, and we begin the process internally here with staff and the superintendents. The other key thing I should mention with respect to budget development, it does reflect the board's vision and supports the goals of the board's multi-year strategic plan. And you'll see that as I bring the budget forward over the next couple of months. We specifically reference areas of the strategic plan that are impacted by this. So things like French immersion, our tech renewal that's gone on in secondary schools over the last 4 years, all those are key strategic initiatives that are specifically highlighted in the budget that's presented. And so this is really just, capital plan. The previous screen was just a capital plan and how that flows into budget, and all of it flows in and is congruent with and supports the strategic plan. With respect to financial management, the role for the trustees, boards are required to review and approve financial management policies, expense policies, procurement policies, other financial policies we have, and they receive and seek any clarifications about the audited financial statements prepared and presented by the treasurer of the board, that would be me, through the audit committee. So, and then there's a large number of transparent processes with respect to budget planning around major revenues and expenditures, spending patterns, risk and mitigation strategies. We look at those, and we actually, although we receive the budget in 12-month increments or 12-month slices, I can assure you that at the more senior table, we're having conversations about how's this going to impact us in the longer term, and is this a sustainable item financially in the long term if we choose to go in this direction. Financial reporting and sign-off. The Director of Education is required to certify that the board's financial statements, other reports, are prepared in accordance with the Ed Act, so there's attestations in that regard. We have external audits. There's ministry reviews. The provincial auditor may be involved. We do have an internal audit program, as you're all well aware. And so these are just things that help with reporting and monitoring and risk management. High-risk boards here, as you see, are sometimes asked to develop deficit management plans or multi-year financial recovery plans. As I mentioned, we don't fall into those situations. Interim financial reporting, I mentioned revised estimates and interim reporting, and that happens through revised estimates. Again, we're not a high-risk board from a financial perspective. With respect to capital, ministry provides resources, as you know, for the development and implementation of capital funding. It monitors our actions to ensure accountability to taxpayers, and ministry develops fair and equitable capital policies to ensure equitable treatment for boards across the province. Trustees, it shows your responsibility. Decisions related to pupil accommodation and safety largely, accountable for ensuring students have access to safe learning environments and well-developed program opportunities while ensuring the best use of public funding. Talks about policies and priorities and ensure capital projects adhere to the ministry's objectives and funding benchmarks. Ministry provides funding for capital purposes to school boards for a number of programs. We have Capital Priorities Grant, School Consolidation Capital Grant. This is a new grant that appeared in the fall of 2014. We applied for resources under that Consolidation Capital Grant for Midland and Penetang, as well as Barrie Central, Barrie North. Both received funding, as you know. We haven't done capital priorities yet for the current year. We're anticipating a call for those in the next few weeks. And then school condition improvement money, and this is really for renewal needs. We receive in total about 12.8 million from two pots of money, annual renewal and school condition improvement money, 12.8 million to handle our annual capital maintenance needs. I can tell you that in the board, we have a deferred maintenance liability of in excess of 130 million. So 13 million does not go a long way. I will say that it's an issue not just in school boards, it's an issue for hospitals, it's an issue for municipalities, it's an issue for universities as well. So the whole MUSH sector, there's this large deferred maintenance issue that's out there, and our ministry is committed to putting some additional resources in over the next 3 years to try to help facilitate drawing down the deferred maintenance liability that exists, but it's a lot of money in the province. So I thought I saw a hand. So.
Trustee Locke, did you have a question that you wanted to ask me?
I did, if I could.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Through the chair to Superintendent Desk. I just want to confirm, do you basically have a waiting list of $113 million for our current schools for upgrades, just to keep them up to date and running properly?
Superintendent Desk, please.
Through the chair, yeah, so we would love, if somebody dropped 130 million on us tomorrow, and we could manage it all at one time, we'd love to go out and get things ready for next September. So there are projects that we'd like to do in schools, and we're just not able to get there because we haven't got the resources to do them. And as I say, that's not just this school board, it's every school board in the province, it's hospitals, it's municipalities, and it's certainly universities. Capital Priorities Grant, and I won't go into the specifics, but this provides annual funding for new schools. Over the last 3 years, we've done very well in capital priorities, as the table's aware, on a sort of per capita basis or relative to other boards in the province. We seem to have benefited greatly from this grant. I think in part because we do the hard work that the ministry is looking for in terms of arts and those sorts of things, and as a result, we feel like we get rewarded. I will say the minister, when she was in Midland, presenting us with, or giving the announcement with respect to MSS, PSS, and Barrie Central, Barrie North, she did reference our business cases, and kudos to Superintendent Dance and all the staff that are involved in his area and my area. We work really well together. We work very hard to make those solid business cases, and I think it pays off, or has paid off for us in the past very well. School consolidation capital, this was about where schools are being consolidated and right-sized, and it was a very special grant. Again, we did well relative to the number of announcements that have been made. This board is a significant portion of those that have been announced today. School condition improvement, this again is money. It's part of the 12.8 we received for annual renewal, and it flows to us automatically through the GSNs. School utilization, the ministry provides programs that incentivize the use or remove unused space from buildings. This is largely for top-up grants, so we receive funding for underutilized spaces, and you've heard the minister, I'm sure, speak to, as she's been doing these announcements, speak to spending $1 billion a year in the province to fund empty chairs. Ministry's making an active move towards reducing, and through the top-up grants, the ministry is making an active move towards reducing the top-up grants in each of the boards, and effectively putting pressure on boards to complete yard processes. So it all kind of fits together when you look at it. So there's art processes that are being encouraged through the reduction of top-up grants. At the same time, we're bringing in new accommodation review guidelines, and in some cases, they've provided boards with dollars to improve and bolster their planning departments, and in some cases, create planning departments, because not all school boards have them. So kind of all fits together, and we're expecting actually a fairly hefty reduction in terms of our top-up grant for 15-16. Nothing's been announced. It's pure speculation on our part. If you look at it, the stars kind of align in that direction. So that's really it for the 40-some pages. I hope I did it in 20 minutes or less. I'm not sure I did, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Steph. Do we have any questions from trustees at this point in time? There'll be significant more information that comes through in the budget process. This is just sort of the introduction at this point in time. But we will work through the budget in the coming months for approval in May. See no questions? Okay, thank you very much, Superintendent Jeff. Okay, that takes us into items for decision. The first item we have is what's on the printed agenda is item number 3, which is the notice of motion from February 4th, 2015, Business and Facilities Standing Committee. Is there a mover for that notice of motion? Trustee Clements, is there a seconder? Trustee Cameron, thank you. So at this point in time, and I just need to explain my role as chair. As chair of the committee or as chair of the board, our role is to facilitate the actual meeting that takes place. We're also responsible for ensuring that the work that's done in committee or work that's done in board is done in accordance with the Education Act, in accordance with our bylaws, and if our bylaws are signed on a matter as per Robert's rules, because this board follows Robert's rules of order. So I had indicated and sort of hinted to it when the notice of motion was introduced at our committee meeting that I did not believe the motion was in order. Since that time, I've done considerable work. I've consulted with the chair of the board, Trustee Beacock, as well as the vice chair of the board, Trustee Locke, along with the director. And in fact, the motion that is before us, or the notice of motion that's before us, is not in order. It was not moved as a motion to amend. It was moved as a main motion. And no main motion is in order that conflicts with the motion previously adopted at a time that is still in force. So we do have main motions that are already in force, and we have main motions that have already been acted upon. And such as this, I am forced to rule this motion out of order, which means it will not come to the table.
So I'd like to challenge the chair's decision to hold that board.
Okay, Trustee Clements, first, can you please just make sure you're acknowledged before you speak? And I would also remind the audience, this is a business meeting, and I would ask that you please carry yourself in that manner so there's no speaking out, there's no applause. Okay, thank you. So Trustee Clements, please.
Vice Chair, to you, I'd like to challenge the chair's decision to rule out motion of order.
Okay, is there a second for that challenge? Okay, Trustee Cameron? Okay, so then there has been a challenge to my ruling, so I will hand the meeting over to the vice chair of the board, the committee. Trustee May can handle the challenge.
Okay, I will now take over as chair, and we have a mover and a seconder for the challenge. So now we will hear from both sides, the challenger, Trustee Clements, as well as its chair. So, and there will be no discussion after they have spoken. So first, I will ask Trustee Clements to speak on why he is challenging the motion.
So, through the Vice Chair, I grew up on a farm, and on the farm there's electric fence, and one day I took a stick and I touched the electric fence, and nothing happened. And so I took the stick and I held it longer on the electric fence, and still nothing happened. And it didn't take long before I actually grabbed the electric fence. And I learned something that day. Well, I learned more than one thing that day, but as I look back on it, that was play-based learning, and that was experiential learning, and something that this board espouses to and encourages and wants to have happen within all of our schools. And that's very important. So, how many trustees have actually gone through the Robert's rules? Has anybody practiced fine? Awesome, very good. So, just to note, it's 700 and some pages. So there's an awful lot in there. And since I put forth that motion, I've learned an awful lot of things. One of the things I learned was that I found intriguing was that new trustees that are newly elected don't have a lot of power over what happened before. So let's say that the outgoing board, for example, voted to build a treehouse and the vote was 7-5 in favor. And the public was adamant they didn't want the treehouse, and they voted every one of those 7 trustees out of office. Well, under our rules, the motion can only be rescinded by someone who approved the original motion. And since in my example, all 7 were voted off the island, it would be very difficult to stop that motion at that point in time. Now, the reason for this, I'm told, is that a new board cannot easily undo the work done by a previous board, which I understand, but in my mind, that's not very democratic at all. It's quite undemocratic. And I understand democracy can be disruptive. And I want to make it abundantly clear, the motions I put forward have nothing to do with stopping the sale of Barrie Central. Based on what I've learned, the school is closing, and I see nothing that would warrant stopping that process. What I do see, though, is there's a problem with the timing of the closing of Barrie Central and the opening of South Barrie.
Trustee Clements, can I just interrupt you for a second? I need you to speak specifically to why you are challenging that, because it's not time for speech. We're directly related.
So that's why I brought those motions forward. Since there's no way for the trustee to rescind the previous motion, the only option is to amend the previous motion, and that is why the motions before you are actually amendments. Now, I realize that the wording of my original motions, amending the previous motions is worded incorrectly, but these are cosmetic issues only. The problem is not the content, and I'm open to amending those motions, and actually I've got versions that are very similar that should follow that and shouldn't go out of order that I present. And it's not unusual to amend a motion before voting on it. We ourselves have done this a couple of times. As long as the motion does not turn into something totally different that people are not prepared to discuss. So if we're to change the motion into a discussion on the treehouse building, most people would be prepared to discuss it. It wouldn't be fair, right? So I suggest that the wording of the original motion can be corrected so that it is in order and that it should be discussed. So to the point that motions in Alberta correctly, I can see whoever with 5 experienced trustees and the rest of us, I'm sure we can resolve that in very short order. And again, I've got versions of the motions that I think will actually be ruled in order. Now, my understanding is that the other problem with these motions is that a motion cannot be put forth when something's in process. For example, we can't have a motion to keep Barrie Central open until Barrie South is ready for students because the process to close Barrie Central June 2016 is in process, and that is in December terms, etc. But the only way to have such a motion come forward would be to rescind the original motion, which dates back to May 2011, and then put forth a new motion. But a new trustee can't put a motion to rescind a motion that the existing trustee already voted on, unless they voted on it originally, right? So a new trustee couldn't actually do that, which means they're pretty powerless to make any changes. Now that we have money for South Barrie, the new school, now that we own the land for South Barrie, now that we have some of the money for the construction for Barrie North, I believe we can now make a more realistic estimate as to when South Barrie will open. And frankly, I don't think 2016 is realistic. And if that's the case, then it's likely better to keep Barrie Central open for the year until 2017, so it gets considered.
Trustee Clements.
Almost there. I also want to
We have
point
to
out.
speak directly. Sorry, please don't interrupt when I'm speaking. As chair, I'm able to stop for point of order, so you just need to speak directly to what the challenge is, and not all around it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, and I also want to point out that if you look at the minutes from the meeting from May 31st, 2011, one motion was not passed, the motion that wasn't passed refers to looking at adjusted timelines if the partnership deal fell through. So I understand the need for procedures, and I understand the need for order, and I'm not suggesting we ignore them when it's convenient. What I am suggesting is that there is the letter of the law and there's the spirit of the law, and our job as trustees is to interpret the law weighing those two factors. If that were not so, we could be replaced by computers. If this might make things better for kids, I think we should have that discussion. So I'm asking the trustees to support the experiential-based learning and that we advocate so strongly, not just for me, but for everybody here at the board. I'm asking you to work with me on the wording of the motion, so it's correct, so we can put it through and discuss it this evening. I'm asking you to declare these motions in order, so we can discuss them. Tempest, if you get time flies, we need to have this discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Clements. So we will now hear from Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm in a very difficult position because these motions were moved incorrectly by Trustee Clements. I think it's very important, having listened to Mr. Trustee Clements speak, to acknowledge that he did contact the chair of the board prior to introducing these motions and was given advice by the chair of the board to talk to staff, to talk to myself before preparing these motions and unfortunately, Trustee Clements chose not to do that. And our role and our integrity comes from our ability to follow the rules and follow the process. And those rules that are in place are sometimes there to protect boards from flip-flopping into making decisions that are inappropriate and to making decisions and flip-flopping on them that affect people's lives directly. There were 7 motions, I believe, that came out of the very central arc. And first one being that staff would pursue viable partnerships until September 30th. It's been acted upon. If a viable partner is secured, staff will have prepared a business case for the Ministry of Education. There was no partner. If a viable partner is not secured by September 30th, 2014, the school will close as of June 30th, 2016. We are moving forward on that. If a viable partner is not secured by September 30th, 2014, staff will submit a capital priorities business case to accommodate students at other various schools. That has been done and has received funding. Staff will report to Business and Facilities Standing Committee at least quarterly on the status of the partnerships discussion. That has taken place. An attendance area review of the 5 various secondaries will commence in October 2014, and that has been completed. So we are in a process where we have made considerable action and we have moved forward. So I did, just to make sure that I was correct and to verify that I was making the appropriate decision and interpretations on this, I did seek an opinion on this matter from a professor of parliamentary law, who has provided opinion that the motion before us is not in order. He has stated very clearly that Robert's Rules of Order states on page 106, no main motion is in order that conflicts with a motion previously adopted at any time and is still in force. The motions that were previously passed are still in force. They have been acted upon, and as such, this motion is not in order, nor was it introduced as a motion to amend. So I do believe that these motions are out of order, and unfortunately I've been put in a difficult position as the one having to make that decision as chair of this committee. I think that had someone asked for assistance on these motions, we would have been able to work through this, but I think it's vital that trustees, new or old, be familiar with Robert's Rules of Order. They define how we conduct our business. In absence of an item being addressed in our bylaws, we then refer to Robert's Rules. And I think it is vitally important that all trustees, whether new or old, understand those bylaws and operate within those bylaws. So I do believe that the decision that I've made tonight is correct, and I stand by that decision.
Okay, thank you very much, Trustee Lloyd. So now we've heard from both sides. There's no discussion. I will call the vote, and just so everybody's aware what you're voting for, I'm first going to ask who is in favor or support of the challenger, Trustee Clements, and then I'm going to ask who is in favor of Chair Lloyd. Okay, just so you know what you're voting for.
Hey, Laura, can I ask for the recorded vote, please?
Yes?
So for the benefit of the new trustees, a recorded vote has been called for, so I will undertake that vote. And as I ask you to cast your vote, either for the challenger or for the chair, I would ask you to stand at that time. So at this time, the recorded vote has been called for, and I would ask all those who are in favor of the challenger to please stand. Trustee Aikens, Trustee Cameron, Trustee Clements. Thank you. At this time, I would ask all of those who are in favor of the chair to please stand.
Trustee Schilling?
Trustee Schilling?
Trustee Locke?
Trustee Locke?
Trustee Hodgson?
Trustee Hodgson? Trustee De Silva?
Trustee Maine?
Trustee Maine? Trustee Lloyd? Trustee Chandler? Trustee Armstrong? And Chair Peacock. Thank you very much. There are 3 trustees in favor of the challenger and 9 trustees in favor of the chair. And so this motion's, the chair is ruling that this motion is out of order stands.
Okay, thank you very much. That takes us to item number 2, under items for decision. Notice of motion from the February 4th, 2015 Business and Facilities Standing Committee. Is there a mover for that motion? Trustee Clements, is there a seconder for that motion? Okay, Trustee Aikens? As per the last discussion, the situation with respect to this motion is no different. The opinion that I received was exactly the same, that both of these motions are out of order, that this motion was not introduced as a motion to amend. So as chair of the committee, I have no option but to rule this motion out of order. Thank you. So that will take us on to item number 3, the attendance area review for Barrie Secondary School. And Superintendent Dance, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Lloyd. Before trustees tonight is the attendance area review report based on the attendance area review that took place over the fall and into the winter for Barrie Secondary Schools, resulting from the end of the partnership discussion and the action of the motions through the ARC surrounding Barrie Secondary Schools, which concluded this past year with the end of the partnership pursuit on the part of the board. Before trustees is a summary of the meetings that took place, including the input from the public at the meetings. Significant impact for trustees to understand is that although other concerns were raised beyond boundaries, the boundaries themselves for the most part were not issue at the attendance area reviews. They were ones that the situation with regard to Barrie Central closing and the population of that school being distributed to, for the most part, to Barrie North and to Barrie Innisdale was not up for discussion. We had very few questions about that. We did have some clarifications with regard to the Edge Hill area that were dealt with. We also had some clarifications with regard to extended French, because a portion of the population of the extended French group that now attends Hillcrest Public School will be headed towards Eastview, which supports the extended French program there. Beyond that, the other questions that were raised included Midhurst Secondary Plan, which has been added to this report, and in response to the questions about how the board will deal with the expected attendance or increased enrollment as a result of the Midhurst Secondary Plan coming into when it starts to produce students coming from the houses that are expected in that area. So the resulting report that you have before you outlines and illustrates the current proposed boundaries and the plans for the attendance areas for these schools with regard to including the new South Barrie Secondary School, which will certainly result in some interesting changes as far as key to us as well as walking schools. We have less transportation as a result of the distribution of these populations. In fact, we expect that after the school is open in New South Barrie and also the areas, we'll have more students walking within walk zones as opposed to transportation. Certainly happy to answer any questions with regard to this process, and certainly the planning department has been very involved with this, and as I mentioned, happy to answer questions from trustees.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Dance. We have questions from trustees at this point with respect to the report. Trustee Peacock, please, or Chair Peacock, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Superintendent Dance. The first question, and I have a few, but I'll get one or two in, and then we'll see from there what the chair chooses to do. But the first one is, during the election and over the last couple of months, I've had a few calls from people in Oro-Medonte around the Barrie Central Collegiate closing. And I've been around for 8 years, and I think I know my communities fairly well. And so when I've answered the questions or their concerns around Barrie Central Collegiate, I've explained to them, because their concern is that it's affecting Oro-Medonte students. So I've explained in the past that Oro-Medonte students don't typically go to Barrie Central Collegiate. Oro-Medonte students go to Eastview, and they go to Barrie North. The reality is the only students, so we have Guthrie, which 80% of them goes to Eastview, Shandy Bay 100% goes, and WRS 100% goes. And I think the split is around the 7th concession, either going to Aurelia or coming to Barrie. So I've explained that the only way that students from Oro-Medonte would be in any classes in that school was if, first of all, they'd have to be out of attendance area in order to do it, and they would either be taking French, they would be taking some other specialty course, or they might be there because their parent teaches there or something along that line, but that in fact that is not their area and students don't typically go there. Can you please clarify for me if that is the case? Thank you.
Superintendent Dance, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Lloyd, Trustee Peacock. That is the case. There will be minimal disruption through the Barrie attendance review as before trustees right now for students involved at either Eastview or in Bear Creek. As you mentioned, out of area students, certainly there may be an impact, but they've chosen to be out of area to the school that's involved, Barrie Central at this point. Other than that, for the most part, it's no impact at all in that area.
Follow-up,
Thank
Trustee
you.
Peacock, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. It's not a follow-up, it's another question, so if you want to go to somebody else, I'm happy to.
No, ask a question, then we'll move on to the next.
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of the current Barrie Central enrollment, can you tell me what the numbers, let me start over. What is the current Barrie Central enrollment, and what are the numbers who will attend both Barrie North and Innisdale once the school closes?
Superintendent Dance, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Lloyd, Trustee Peacock. Current Barrie Central enrollment is approximately 670 students. That's a number that has dropped from last November in the fall. That is not uncommon among schools, but Barrie Central has had a drop of about 7% of its population, as opposed to the other schools have dropped about 3-4%. Barrie Central is populated by a large number of out-of-area students, not counting the extended French program. So there are a large number that we expect will be returning to other secondary schools, their home secondary schools or other secondary schools as we progress. As far as moving towards September 2016, we anticipate the number to move to Barrie North to be about 230 students, which is almost exactly what the funding amount was from the ministry for additional pupil places at Barrie North. For Innisdale, we anticipate that number will be for regular classroom students from the area that would be transferred in the new attendance areas will be about around 100 students, but in addition to that are the extended French students who at this time number about 150 students at Barrie Central. So the numbers are varying. It depends on how many students continue, how many go back. At Barrie Central right now, for instance, we have out of area that live in different areas. There are 43 students from Innisdale who are out of area, so they would be returning. So when I say 100 plus 150, and then that would be plus an additional 40 out of area students. It is a challenge to map this out simply because of the fact that we're counting current students as opposed to future students. because the students moving in towards September 2016 have never gone to any of the schools, because they would in effect be grade 8s at the end of June 2016, and they would never have gone to the other schools, their destinations. So that will be a situation in a year from now. We anticipate about 130 students going towards Barrie Central, would have gone towards Barrie Central. They would now be distributed between those two schools. So the numbers vary, and they make a challenge as far as ensuring that we have them accurately, but those are the numbers we have right now.
Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Armstrong, please.
Thank you, Superintendent Dance. Sort of on the heels of enrollment questions. And that's something that I know we're going to deal with the capital plan and talking about enrollments and projected enrollments. But with this sort of boundary change, because it's a whole city, certainly the streets are, where you draw the line with the street, the boundary lines and where they're put are quite vital. But I'm just trying to ascertain enrollments that, to me, Innisfail is going to have fairly large enrollment. It's hard to know, though, because I don't know what the enrollment of the new South Barrie School. So does that mean that the typical enrollment will be somewhat equalized amongst all of the schools, or will there be one school that's just, and I think Eastview looks at growth in the next 20 years. So if you just want to comment on that, I know we've got enrollment projections in our capital plan, but we don't really have, what would that mean to enrollment in 2000, or the opening, say, when all of the schools are operating? What does that do to the enrollments?
Senator Dance, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Lloyd, Trustee Armstrong. In effect, at the end of this, 5 schools will be relatively balanced. The key areas, though, will be South Barrie, which will continue to grow as the annexed lands come online. That's the Hewitt secondary plan. And the major pressure point 5 years out will be, in fact, Bear Creek. That is a school that has already seen high enrollments in previous years, but that is where the students that would be coming out of the Salem secondary plan, which is the next secondary plan that will start to come through with the planning that's taking place in the city of Barrie. I mentioned earlier in a different context the Midhurst secondary plan. That is one that we don't anticipate seeing students arriving within the next 7 to 10 years, simply because of its nature. But in the end, we anticipate having, for a period before the Salem secondary plan comes on and Hewitt's plan really starts to create students for the systems, 5 relatively balanced school populations, which hopefully will be around the 1,100 to 1,300 pupil places. That is what the intention is. I believe that we've tried to convey that through this, that maximizes for us, and trustees who've been at the table before recognize we've talked about the optimal size for programming and the optimal size for other aspects of how schools operate, and that's certainly, from our perspective, what our goal is to balance enrollment between the schools.
Trustee Aikens, please.
Thank you, and through the chair to Superintendent Dance. In regards to children in their transition period, has there been any results to show test scores and graduation rates before, after, and during a transition period to another school?
Thank you, and through you, Chair Lloyd, to Trustee Aikens. Simcoe County District School Board's most recent experience with a secondary school in transition is in Aurelia. There have been no formal studies that we're aware of. We aren't aware of too many formal studies anywhere with regard to the follow-up for that, but we did have anecdotal visits by Manager of Communications Alison LaMancha this past year, speaking to students, to staff, to other people involved, and the reports generally were very positive, especially from the student side, simply because of the amount of work that took place in Aurelia, so that when the Park Street students moved over to what is now called OD Park, which was ODCBI, they were made to feel as though they were part of that school and part of a culture leading towards the new school culture. So that was a tremendous amount of work on the part of staff and the community as far as that goes. Preparing a school such as Park Street for closure and then demolition within a short time period was a large undertaking on the part of the staffs of the schools. The staff response was not as positive, possibly because of the fact that when you put two schools together, sometimes the population is not the same for the support staff, for example, and that was one where one school staff is not as greatly represented in the second school. And that's a function of collective agreements. It's also a function of the relative demographics of the staff. But the nice part from what Alison Lamentia had reported to us was that the students had found the transition was well managed and made to feel as though they are one community.
Follow-up?
Thank you, through the chair. This is to either Superintendent Dance or Superintendent Jess. Do we have financial analysis of portable costs regarding labor costs, transportation permits, hookup, maintenance, all costs associated with portables that are going to Innisfail Secondary School?
Thank you, and I'll start, and I have to do it in the context of portables at Innisfail Secondary School, simply because we've been working with Principal Stevens at Innisfail. At this time, she has 19 portables on site. 3 of them are completely empty and closed to student use. That would mean fewer portables being needed, and certainly Principal Stevens has indicated to us for the 5-period day that there wouldn't be as many portables required by the first estimation that would be done by what we call SFIS, which is our loading of classes based on 20-to-1. But really, it would be a different way of doing it. Innisfail is in a multiple lunch situation, so that there are 5 periods in the day, and that would mean that her anticipated number of portables to be added at Innisfail is considerably less than what staff had said at the attendance area meetings. That said, the cost per portable to pick up and to move and to hook up, along with power and building permits, is over $10,000 per portable. That also includes fiber optic, because we run our internet there. We also have projectors in our portables, so that although portables are not in school classrooms, they are also ones that have most of the same amenities as a regular classroom does.
Trustee Chandler, please.
And through you, Chair. My question is to Superintendent Dance. Can you just clarify, because there's a lot of numbers being thrown around here, when Barrie Central closes in 2016, some of the students are going to North, and some of them are going to Innisfail. Am I right so far? Then the grade 9s, they will probably move twice. Is that right? I guess my question is, how many students, when the closure occurs, can you speak to the issue of how, if students have to move twice, so go to another school and then move again?
Thank you. And through you, Chair Lloyd, to Trustee Chandler, the movement of any students twice from the perspective of staff would be only if you consider moving from grade 8 to grade 9 and then grade 9 in one school at Barrie Central, for example, and then moving to another. The intention is not to have anybody move more than once as a student of a school. So, for example, if a student in grade 10 right now at Barrie Central, a year out, will be finishing grade 11, they would move once to their new destination high school. The students at Innisfail, who would live in the new South Barrie Secondary School area, would move once. There would be no double moves for students other than the transition from grade 8 to 9 to 10 if they were going to, for example, Barrie Central for grade 9. So it's to minimize moves, to move them once, and to move them to the destination school. The intention again is so that if you have a cohort of approximately 250 students starting at Barrie North in September 2016, those ones would be accommodated as grade 9s at Barrie North, even though they are in the former Barrie Central area, because they would then be considered Barrie North students.
Thank you. Second.
Just to follow up to that. So my understanding is that currently most of the students at Berry Central are out of area. Is that correct? To Berry Central?
Superintendent Dance, please.
Through you, Chair Lloyd, to Trustee Chandler. No, they're not all out of area. There is a significant portion of out of area students, roughly about 130 out of area students. There are also, because it's a specialized program, the students who are in the extended French program, the majority of those students live in the Innisdale area. Of 150 students, roughly 120 of those are from the Innisdale area already. They lived in that area. They would have gone to the extended French program at Warnica.
Okay.
But there's also an extended French program at Hillcrest that feeds into Berry Central. So extended French as a specialized program is one that in elementary school certainly is one where people stay in the program and stay together. At secondary school, there are quite a few students who start in extended French and don't stay in extended French simply because of other program demands. Berry Central's program has been the one in our board that has retained students for a lot of very positive reasons based on the program, but that's unusual compared to other secondary school extended French programs. So there are a large portion of out-of-area students at Berry Central, but not the majority. There are approximately, and this is in keeping with looking out a year, there are approximately 480 students at Berry Central who live in the Berry Central attendance area as it is now, whether they're in extended French or regular classroom program. So 750 is the approximate number at the beginning of this year. It's now quite a bit lower than that, 676.
Thank you.
Trustee Armstrong, you had another question?
I'm sorry, I'm not so sure if you can move on. So through you to Chair Lloyd, to Superintendent Dance, or I'm not sure if anyone else want to comment on my question or take it, but I guess my concern is September 2016, a lot of things are happening on that date. It just seems like a lot of issues, motions are happening on that time. And it begs the question that this is a whole City of Berry boundary redraw, which hasn't been done on, well, probably 30 years. I don't know, when it is sale, 30, 40 years. This is kind of a significant issue of the redrawing of boundaries. And as we all know, boundary lines once drawn should never be moved because parents and students have to count on where they're living and where they're going to go to school. So if for whatever reason the 2016 comes and movements are made, especially for Berry Central students into Berry North, into Innisdale, the students that have to go to Innisdale, possibly, most likely, I don't know, but possibly the new Center Berry School, yet to be named, may not be open on that date. So there is going to be a possible, especially in Innisdale, a congregation of a group coming, and there will be a group leaving. Does it make better program sense that occur before maybe, and typically, you know, we can open a school usually traditionally September or at the start of the next semester. Even if that overlap occurs, that one contingent has come and then one contingent hasn't come, it makes more sense to do it all on that date and rather than hold the movement, hold the boundary change until, you know, everything can happen at once, or with the contingent leaving to the South Berry and a contingent coming into Innisdale. I'm thinking of Innisdale specifically. I realize Berry North is impacted from this, from the movement of students. So I just want to comment on that one because we have to go for boundary changes. It's quite clear. But I just want to be clear that this overlap can be handled at the program level at Innisdale, and even if it's for one semester or 2 semesters, for the next move, that's something that staff can handle.
Superintendent Dan, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Lloyd, Trustee Armstrong, that certainly has been part of the conversations taking place with school principals whether programming can take place. Program invariably increases to a certain point at secondary schools with the numbers of students. That said, there are limited specialty locations. That, if trustees recall, the breadth of the table was one of the key areas for the addition at Bear Creek, was to increase program space. Innisdale has accommodated this population before. It has, as recently as 3 years ago, according to Principal Stevens, accommodated over 1,800 students. At present, there are 1,545. Now, that's second semester students. So if the change were to occur immediately, the total amount would be around 1,900. So she is confident that that could be programmed by utilizing the classrooms with very few additional portables. The number she has given to me is 4, essentially 5, simply because of the multiple lunch and the uses there of the classes at least 4 out of 5 times. That's a significant difference from the number that we talked about before, but it also doesn't bring into thoughts the impact on a playing field, which has been discussed before and we've talked about because it had taken place in the past at that location and at other schools in Barrie over the last couple of decades. Will there be tight programming situations? Yes. But that certainly is one of the key areas that we work with professionalism of our staff and working with setting up the programs so that they're available. One of the most important things that to the mind of staff too is ensuring that those students in grade 11 and 12 have their pathways continued so that they're able to graduate, whether they have moved from Barrie Central or they're moving along the same path and haven't moved at all in Innisdale or Barrie North. The key element for them is that we still want to make sure that they have the pathway that will get them to graduation within 4 years if they choose to do that, or they can come back as well. But that is of ultimate importance, is to make sure that the path is there for them to graduate within that timeline. And by having them at a large school, there are more options. Yes, it may be busier, significantly busier than a school of 600, but it also is one that the opportunities are there. And anecdotally, it's one of those situations that conversations come up with families all the time. When you go to the course calendar section of the board website and you see what is offered at a large school as opposed to a small school, it's infinitely different. And that's positive. It also means sometimes a bigger setting, but it also is one that I'd encourage anybody to take a look at the different program offerings, and you'll see the difference between small schools and large schools, and that is a positive in a lot of ways.
Trustee Peacock, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, my final question. You mentioned briefly earlier about the comments that were made by a number of people that attended the meetings. Can you tell me if there was any changes made to the original discussion or thoughts on the attendance area because of comments that might have been made by parents or people at that meeting, or those meetings?
Superintendent Dance, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Lloyd, to Trustee Peacock, the key area that we heard was the impact of the Midhurst secondary plan. That is a change in the report. We also heard from people who said, keep the school open. I have to keep the school open until accommodations are completely done at both schools, which are building considerations. Those are critically challenging situations, especially considering the facility at Barrie Central. As we've referenced at this table before, the term boilers is used all the time. It's the mechanical heating system of Barrie Central. And as trustees would recall, in this past fall, and certainly even new trustees, we asked you to be aware of the fact that the contingency plan had to be put in place because the double shift of 2 schools in one location could take place. And that's one that, in delaying that aspect, we don't reference that in the report, but it's one that is of consideration. So it's one that we heard, but it didn't change the report.
The main change that we brought through the report was remarkably nothing about boundaries, because the initial boundaries didn't bring up those questions, other than extended French parents were wondering about having the program at the new Southbury Secondary School. And we're not able to do that because if we start with grade 9s and 10s at the new South School, we can't offer 11 and 12 for the extended French students. That would interrupt the pathway I mentioned earlier to Trustee Armstrong for those students. And it's also, from a planning perspective, it's important that we ensure that Innisfail, which will become more of a inner school as opposed to an outer school where development usually takes place, has a sustainable population. So in reference to your question, I would say that the key element that we added afterwards was certainly the reference to the Midhurst secondary plan, because it came up as a topic at the meetings.
Trustee Beacott, follow-up?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a comment that I'm pleased that the Midhurst secondary plan is part of this, and I'm sure that you're aware that with the number of new council members, they're trying to work through a way of slowing it down, if not doing more. So my guess is it might be some time before it even gets sort of off the ground, but I appreciate the fact that you've taken that into consideration. So thank you.
Are there any other speakers to this at this time? Okay, seeing none, we have 2 recommendations contained within this report. Number 1, that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve the proposed attendance areas effective September 2016 as set out in appendices F and G in report number BFD1, attendance area review, various secondary schools, dated March 4th, 2015. Is there a mover for this motion? Trustee Beacott, and the seconder, Trustee Locke. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Okay, and the motion carries. That takes us to recommendation number 2, that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve the establishment of an extended French as a second language program at Innisfail Secondary School effective September 2016 as set out in report number BFD1, attendance area review, various secondary schools, dated March 4th, 2015. Is there a mover? Okay. Trustee Chandler, seconder, Trustee Armstrong. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is also carried. Okay. So I think at this time it would be a good time to have a break. So I'd like your motion to recess. Trustee Beacott, seconded. Trustee Locke. So we will come back at 7:40, please. All those in favor? Thank you. And that carries. And folks, that it's already 10:08, so if we could try and move this along, not that I'm rushing anybody, but maybe there are a few items on this agenda that we want to deal with tonight. So the next item is mission statement, vision statement, and values, and that's Dr. Wallace, please.
To you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much. The report you have in front of you is a report that reflects a lot of work that's gone on for quite some time to take a look at our mission statement, create an actual new vision statement for the Simcoe County District School Board. For some of you, you know that we began this process almost a year ago to consult with the community about what should a mission statement actually look like. And just for some of you, you may realize that the mission statement up till now has been quite a lengthy paragraph. I don't think perhaps many of us around this table could read it off for you because it's quite lengthy. But this mission statement, it was felt that we needed to take a look at it, take it back out to the community, go to the various committees that we have within our board, and get the reflections from those individuals to come back to us with what they felt the mission statement really should say in a very crisp way, what it meant, but also then to create a vision statement. And then further to that, we already know that with our values, if you look around this room, you see the various colored signs of character attributes. And those really are the values that this board has adopted for many, many years. And I think for many of you who've been in our schools and you've seen what the character ed traits are certainly something that our students use on a regular daily basis and have very often monthly assemblies on them. So this is what we did. We took all that information. It came to us. It came to the board in a report in November. At that point in time, I indicated to the board that I wanted some more time. I wanted to take this and take a little more thinking about it. I really did feel that it was important to bring it back then to the new board, some of the thinking that we were doing. And that I felt that we needed to form another smaller committee to take some of that information and really look at it and look at the wording and make sure that it truly reflected what we want to go out. Because remember that we set the mission statement and the vision statement, the values, and from those statements, then what we will be doing is we will start to look at the goals for our board. And there's already been a suggestion that we call them commitments rather than goals, but we'll talk about that. And then under those goals, and currently we have 4 goals, but under those goals, then you set the directions. And under each of those 4 goals, we have different directions based on the needs of the board and based on the kinds of programming and also taking a look at the renewed vision coming from the Ministry of Education. And you've all got those documents as well. So we'll be taking all of that information and taking that out for consultation. And I would suggest to you that when we first developed the strategic plan back 6 years ago, it took us almost a year to bring that back. And we did a lot of work with trustees. From the trustees group, then we went out to all the various community groups as well, and then that all came back and was discussed in all the various committees within the board, and then finally approved within about a year's time. So that's going to be the work over the next year, that we will then start to take a look at the strategic plan, those goals, those directions, and then work through those again for us as a board with this Board of Trustees. So in front of you, you have what we have come to now through a great deal of consultation. I would like to ask Mel, our communication officer, to talk to you a little further. She jumped right in with Alison Lamentia leaving, and with Mal taking over this role, she jumped in and became very immersed in this as well. And it was really good to have her come into it because she was new. She had a new set of eyes on this as well. And so she too was able then to question, able to ask good questions about what this really stood for. And so I'd like to ask her too to speak to this as well about why and how we're at this point in time. If that's okay with the chair.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair, thank you, Director Wallace. So as Director Wallace mentioned, we did undergo an extensive consultation process, part of which occurred before I started, as she referred to, when we were looking towards developing the new mission and vision statements. And as a bit of a background, the mission statement at its base level is why we exist, why are we here? And then the vision really wraps up what's our desired end state, what do we want to achieve? And again, these are very lofty goals, not something we're necessarily ever going to achieve or going to achieve in a short period of time, but something definitely to work towards. And so through the consultations that we did, we also did a broad public consultation after working with various committees with the board of trustees and other groups throughout the 2013-14 year. And at that point, we did go out to the public and offer some draft statements. So a draft mission statement as well as the draft vision. And that's the point at which Director Wallace, once we had those research results and had some strong support for the values and the mission and vision statement that we were putting out there for feedback, and so we did decide to go to that smaller committee. So the smaller committee was a representative group across the board of various individuals and bargaining groups and that sort of thing. And what we really came down to was that we were looking at the right language, but we did modify it slightly in order to maintain that why we exist and where do we want to be. And so the drafts that we did come, the recommendations that we're coming to you with today are the mission statement. As you can see, we inspire and empower learning for life. And then the vision is a community of learners achieving full potential. Some of the words that are involved in this language, the inspiring and the empowering, have pretty strong meaning across the board, especially with the achieving excellence, the renewed vision from the Ministry of Education, and the idea of a community of learners as well. What we really wanted to address is the fact that we are here at a base level for students and to support student achievement and education, but that we are a community and a group, and that the learning of all of the people involved in our school communities, whether it's parents, whether it's staff, whether it is the students, whoever it happens to be, that's important, and we want to support that learning and achievement and inspire and empower everybody to see themselves in the board, in the work that they're doing, in the learning that they're doing, whatever that may be. And so that's kind of where we landed upon these two recommendations.
Through you, Chair, I just wanted to add as well, you all know that we have, I think you know, we have a tagline, your future, our priority, and that tagline will still remain as well. It's well known throughout our board. And again, it's that short, quick, but a tagline that is well known by our staff. And that's the intent here. And if we were to get approval, then we would go back and take these statements. They would become part and parcel in every school, and would be statements that we would refer to in the work that we are doing. And if you had seen our other statement, you would have seen it was quite lengthy, even though I will honestly say to you, it was meant to be very inclusive. It truly was. That was the intent at that time. So I'm certainly recognize why all that work happened at that time to create that. But now what is very much stressed, that when you create a mission and vision statement, they need to be short and powerful so that people can start to live them, start to work them as they put things together. So that's why this is in front of you, and I would be more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from trustees? Trustee Armstrong, please, and then Trustee Beacon.
Thank you, Chair Lloyd, through you to the Director Wallace. Thank you for the presentation, and it did, you know, I did raise some questions about the statements, because also under the vision statement there's a sentence. So I wondered, was that part of the statement? Because why is that there? To me, that should be a header above, because it is not, it's not part of the statement. It's either statement. So it is important, but I wondered that when I saw the placement. Is that part of the vision statement also, because it's very close? So thanks for answering that. You know, to me, a mission statement says what we're doing right now, and the vision means where are we heading. And I really do like the mission statement. It's very powerful. It's precise. It's understandable. Unfortunately, the vision statement for me, I don't understand what community of learners achieving full potential means, because without the explanation. Because community of learners, I've never heard that term in the educational realm. Is that a school? Is that, what is this community? So that's, I find that a little confusing, and I don't know if that's where we want to be. A community of learners, and when you're saying that's everyone involved with the school, with the board, that would be everyone from students, staff, parents. But it also sounds to me that you want a community of learners achieving full potential. This is a group process. There's no individual achievement. So I'm a little concerned about the vision statement, even though you've done focus group and then have all this input, and it's short and it is a powerful statement, but I had a hard time understanding what that meant. So I'm not really happy with the vision statement.
Okay.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Excuse me. So I'm going to interpret what I believe it means, and I know you didn't ask me the question, but I was going to make the comment anyway. So, and I remember when we had a discussion before, one of the things that we talked about is we now have learners who are young and older. We have learners who are disabled, we have learners that are on IEPs, we have all these different learners. So we're not just about schools, we have adult ed, we have the alt schools, we have so many different things in our board that is about learning. So when I read it, we're talking about including the whole community as potential learners. So we could be talking about teachers, but I believe we're also talking about adults. I mean, in our adult ed centers, we have, our schools, we have people 65 and 70 who are getting their grade 12 diplomas. And so that community is very broad-based. It's not just schools. So when I read it, because of the type of board we are, that's how I envision the community piece. The achieving full potential, again, we know, and I think we've had in the past some discussion about that, but full potential is not the same for every student. Full potential is a certain student's full potential, which is different than somebody else. So, for example, somebody that is disabled, or somebody with an IEP or an exceptionality, their full potential, while they're achieving it, will not be the same as somebody else, but it's still their full potential. So when I look at it and I read it, I believe that what it's saying is that we're inclusive of all the learners that we have within our board, young, old, anyone with challenges, different races, all of everything. So I think it's trying to combine that. So that's how I would view that, and I don't know if that's actually how it was, but that's how I would interpret that. And I think it is trying to make it broader based and not be focusing. We're no longer just about kids up to grade 12, our boards, and particularly this board. We're about a whole bunch of other things. We're about e-learning, we're about, everything that I said. So I think that's, when I read it, I think that's what it's trying to attempt. And to me, I think it is very inclusive. It isn't excluding anyone. It's very inclusive regardless of what your full potential is or where you are in the community. That's my view.
Thank you. Dr. Walsh, did you want to?
To you, Chair. I'm looking over and I see Superintendent Simpson's waving her hand at me. So I always listen to my staff as well. So with your indulgence, if I could ask her to speak. I know her entire program staff became involved in this as well. But as she makes her way to the table, absolutely, and the defining of a community of learners. We know that we've come a long way to think about who are our learners. And we know that perhaps 10 years ago, we always just zeroed in on the students. We know that it's not just the students anymore, and that it's beyond the students. It's the teaching staff, it's all the other support staff, it's our parents, it's our community members. These are all individuals that we interact with and have to work with to become partners with us. And we know that there are challenges along the way to have people understand where we're going to. We know, too, that our world is beyond Simcoe County in some ways, too, because technology has expanded it immensely of who that community of learners is. But very much the people that we talk to were very adamant that it's not just about students. It's absolutely about students who we serve. Absolutely. That's who ultimately is who we want to see do well. But we know it takes the whole village, so to speak. It takes that community of learners all together, working together to achieve that full potential. So that's that ultimate, okay? Getting them all working together. And that's certainly something that we're certainly striving to more and more realizing that we need to reach out far beyond the walls of our school. Superintendent Simpson, if you could add, please. Superintendent Simpson, please.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair. As Dr. Wallace said, our hashtag is Better Together. And out of all the professions that we know out there today, if we are not in the business of education, of a mindset that each of us is a learner each and every day, then we don't really know what we're all about. So we believe that by embodying that in the language of community of learners, teachers being learners, principals being learners, superintendents being learners, and our director who models that as well, being a learner, we know that there are many things changing at a rapid rate that we can barely keep track of today. The world is evolving at an incredible pace. Technology is changing the way we work, and it's absolutely revolutionizing more than our field, more than just education. If you think about the variety of innovations and changes that technology is enabling out in the greater world. And our students are teaching us every day. So we have distributed $1 million worth of iPads, and when you visit classrooms today, you will see teachers learning how to do things with the technology because students are helping them. So there is a learning mindset that we hope that this fosters and grows as a culture, because we believe that we all learn each and every day something new, and that's a really important open to learning mindset that each of us needs to embrace, especially in this work that we do.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Locke.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to, actually, just a comment. I'm very happy to see the community of learners in the vision statement. I had a very interesting conversation with George Koros about learners, and no one's mentioned trustees as learners. Every time we go into one of our schools, every time we go to a SAL meeting, every time we sit at these tables and read these reports, we're learning something. Everyone in the system is learning something. If they're not, then they're too good for you, as far as I'm concerned. If you think you know everything, then, good for you. But I think that it's a very positive vision statement that we are a community of learners, and yes, we learn from the kids, we learn from the teachers, we learn from everybody, and it's a mutual learning that goes on, and I really appreciate the fact that is in there. But George and I had a very lengthy conversation, and I was like, yay learners after we were done, so thank you.
Director Wallace, please.
Thank you, Chair. However, in reflection, through the trustee's comment about defining community of learners, perhaps as we send this out, then we would make sure definitions were there. So we would make sure that definition is there so that it is very clear, because I don't want to step too far afield and not have people understand. That's what we want this to be, is that people are understanding it. So it's a very, I take that very seriously when that's stated, and we would definitely define that so that people would be very clear what we mean, because it is it's a new way of looking at it. And but certainly when we've looked at other mission and vision statements and the kinds of words that people are using, we're not too far off in what's being used there. But I certainly understand what Trustee Armstrong is saying, and that we would be very careful that that definition would be very much there.
Trustee Clements, please.
Through the chair to Director Wallace. I mentioned learning tonight. I like this. It's really short. It's very direct. The one thing that I think is missing from that list of values would be resiliency.
Director Wallace, please.
Through you, Chair. I hear what you're saying. When we sent this out to everyone, that was not one word that came back. We didn't hear that I'm aware of. But I thank you for that can certainly think about that. I mean, it did come forward, and I will say to you very honestly, right now, and I'm going to be very practical with you as well, right now we have 10 character attributes. You can see them. And schools use them kind of on a monthly basis. That's just kind of how it evolved, right? And right now, these 10, and we thought maybe one of these they'd go, not there yet. Or, we don't use that one, or it doesn't work very well for a month when we do that in our elementary schools or whatever. Every one of these they found very, very powerful. And so we didn't get that word coming to us. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying that at this point in time, that it put its way up to one of the top 10. But I will turn to now and to share a little more information.
Please go ahead. Through you, Chair, to Trustee Clements. So in the consultation that we do publicly, we also ask questions related to the commit to character values, the character attributes that you see around the room here. And we did have very, very strong positive response to those core values. Over 88% of the respondents actually agreed that the values that we listed, these 10, captured the SCDSB core values. We also asked within that study about values that respondents felt should be added. And although resiliency, I would agree, is an incredibly important trait and something that we do want to foster within our students, within the context of that feedback and that consultation, resiliency actually was not, I'm just doing a double check here, but was not on that list of the values or words that people felt should be, or that they had suggested to be added to those 10 character traits.
Mr. Taylor?
Through you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. Is the vision statement supposed to be idealistic in that you're saying everyone's going to reach their full potential? Is that choosing of that language as opposed to providing opportunities for community learners to achieve full potential? And my second question is there a linguistic reason why you can't use capitals in all the words, or do you have to have just the capital on the first word?
Director Wallace?
To you, Madam Chair. So the vision statement is, if I could go like that, and it was there, okay, my ultimate dream board. That's what it would be. It's getting there, okay? So this is the ultimate to get there. And the mission statement is the action, right? Like, this is what we're going to be doing, right? By doing this, we hope to get to that ultimate state. That's really what it's trying to do. Should there be capitals or not? I look to my communication expert beside me. I don't think it really matters, does it?
I just think I was to follow up through the chair if I could, that sometimes when we see something and every word is capitalized, it has strength, but perhaps that's not appropriate. I just think that instead of looking like a sentence, it looks like a statement.
Sorry, through you, Chair. And yes, I definitely think that in different treatments of the statements that they may be represented with capitals and that sort of thing, in kind of common use, they would be more of a sentence and used in that structure, and so that's why only the capital on the first. But as I mentioned, if we're doing things graphically, depending on how it's going to be laid out and how it's going to be used as a visual statement within a school environment perhaps, or something like that, we might look at using capital letters through it or something like that for sure.
Any other comments? I just had one comment, and it was just more my individual preference. I don't like the term full potential. I like individual potential. I think when you use the word full, it's expected it's at a certain level. And some of our students make tiny progress, and it's their individual potential. And so I would prefer to see the word individual in there rather than full potential, because I think full, when I see that word, is a measurement versus an individual. But other than that, I like them. I would prefer to see that one word change, but I think I can live with it. Any other comments? Okay, so we do, Director Wallace, please.
Through you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to say that if we can get approval for this, my intent would be is to create new plaques for this, and then we would launch this. And it would become the launch of us beginning then the whole strategic plan process again for our board. So that would, just so you know the timelines again, that would be the intent. So in the next couple of months, once we got this plaque or whatever, then we would bring it forward and we would move from there. So just so you know the timelines.
Okay, thank you. There is a recommendation contained within this report that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve the mission and vision statements and values as set out in report number BFD4, mission statement, vision statement, and values dated March 4th, 2015. Is there a mover for that? Trustee Locke, and seconder by Trustee Aikens, please. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? And that carries. So thank you. That takes us down to revision to policy 4121, continuing education, and that is Superintendent Jeff, please.
Hey, Chair Lloyd, and through you, what you have before you tonight is amendments to policy 4121 regarding continuing education. If you look at the red line version, which begins on page 5 of the PDF document, you'll see small change under rationale, and then what we've really done, the major changes that are associated with this are following on page 6 under self-study and continuing education is now responsible for e-learning in the board. So that's been included as part of 2.9, and then adult native language courses as well under 3.0. So those are the key changes to this policy, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Superintendent Jeff with respect to this? Okay, seeing none, there is a recommendation in the report that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve the revisions to policy 4121, continuing education as set out in Appendix C of report number BFD5, revision to policy 4121, continuing education dated March 4th, 2015. Is there a mover? Trustee Chandler and secondary Trustee Beacock. Thank you. Call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? And that carries. Thank you. That takes us to item number 6, which is revision to policy 3140, health and safety, and that is Superintendent Jeff, please.
Thank you, Chair Lloyd, and through you, what you have before you tonight is revisions to health and safety policy number 3140. Red line version begins on page 3. In fact, there is a one-word change, one word being taken out, and that's under guidelines 3.5, and it's not redlined, but it's the word genuinely being removed from the document, and that's the only change, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? We're all happy to know what that was, so that's great. The recommendation in the report is that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve the revisions to policy 3140, health and safety, as set in Appendix C of report number BF86, revisions to policy 3140, health and safety, dated March 4th, 2015. Is there a mover? G. Armstrong, and seconded by Trustee De Silva, sorry. Call the question. All those in favor and opposed? And that carries. Thank you. That takes us to Capital Plan 2014, and that is Superintendent Dance, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Lloyd. Before trustees tonight is a rather large volume, our 244-page capital plan. It covers a wide variety of areas, as trustees are aware of your binders, with a variety of different sections. As we've referenced before, we did an introduction to capital planning a couple of months ago, and we did a presentation last month, and this is the result of that effort. Senior Planner Sandy Complete, Manager Cukin, other members of the planning staff, and other members of the Facility Services Department, as well as Business Services, have collaborated on on this, as well as program as well, with the input of program staff with regard to French immersion and technology education renewal, as you can see. They are critical components as the capital plan, and as referenced in Superintendent Jeff's earlier budget presentation, you can see how the connection is between capital plan, budget, and strategic planning in our board. That said, we believe this is a capital plan that will change in focus in the next year. At this point, we're looking at capital plan 2014 passing in 2015. We anticipate moving this process back into the coming year school calendar year, so that we'll be presenting capital plan, trying to align more with the capital priorities and other announcements that the ministry is doing. So truly, capital plan 2015, we hope to be able to present through 2015. That will be a bit of a change. We'll also look for a change in format. That's something that, just to spice it up a little bit, it certainly also adds more elements to it. It is quite a large volume with regard to that. Some key areas that trustees should be aware of are, of course, attendance area reviews, accommodation reviews, one of which is recommended in this area, and program reviews, which are new for this board, but they're ones that we undertook in a form of that with the Barrie Southeast Elementary School study with regard to Warnica, which was approved last month. But those are all aspects that will come around as the new provincial accommodation review guidelines come in, and they'll be included in our revised SCDSB policy. With regards to the capital priorities, we have been, as was referenced earlier in the budget presentation, very successful in those aspects, and this report needs a slight revision in the regard to capital priorities, because we did receive the funding for Midland Secondary School and some of the funding we're pursuing for Barrie North, and the result is that we are removing Midland from the list that was originally planned to be here. We are continuing with Barrie North on the list and hopes of continuing to acquire additional funds to complete the full project that staff have undertaken with regard to Barrie North. Those are areas that we continue to work with the ministry, and our initial conversations with the ministry staff have been very positive as far as that goes. A different area for capital priorities for us that I should draw everybody's attention to is rural services. This is an unfunded, specifically unfunded area for the Ministry of Education, one which we alerted the ministry to last time we had a visit with them, because we have a number of growing schools in areas that are not and probably will not be serviced, and that has created accommodation pressures so that these schools are close to out of area. They're also close to growth for the most part, trying to accommodate the students that are already in those areas. And that's a departure from our traditional look for builds. It's one that will probably be focusing on septic systems and working with the Ministry of Environment to ensure that those schools meet the reasonable use guidelines. The other aspects of the capital plan, early learning initiatives, we mentioned a potential attendance area review in the Collingwood area because of continuing growth in that area and an imbalance in the populations there. And of course, I mentioned earlier the program areas with French immersion and technology renewal. Those are both areas that we're very proud of the initiatives that have taken place, but we also know that they create pressures as well. With regard to French immersion, it's the choice of people to go to French immersion, but it also, because of our modified transportation situation, it is not door-to-door delivery, which I'm sure trustees hear about whenever this situation comes up. And in technology renewal, we have made great strides in making our schools state-of-the-art, but we also need to sustain that. And that will be an aspect that we'll continue to work with. Key areas for trustees beyond, and Superintendent Sloan can speak to facility partnership, but with regard to environmental initiatives, I'm very happy to announce that we are in the middle of starting with our solar panels on rooftops. We hope to be able to catch some positive press with regard to that. It's been a long process that we started with the approval of the board over 2 years ago, and it's one that we believe will become a revenue stream for the board by this fall. So some construction will start to take place. Of course, if the winter would stop, it's a heck of a lot easier to put solar arrays on buildings when they are cleared. We are very aggressive in the area of surplus properties, and additional properties that are available now will do this. And as has been referenced, we attempt to receive through the processes that are in front of us the funds from these areas so that we can put those against projects of need, for whether it's renewal at schools or it's capital projects. And that's something that the Ministry of Education is very supportive of. And you can see that the list is continuing to grow as far as surplus properties and making them available eventually the market, but certainly going through Regulation 44498. Final sections are the full capital plan, and hopefully they will be able to provide for trustees your specific area, a full picture of what takes place in your school areas, whether it's the projections, whether it's the utilization of the properties and the buildings, whether it's the amount of accessibility, which is always a key aspect for us as we look towards renovating schools, childcare, and also the summary for each planning area, which is very different in certain areas of the board. We do have out of area or holding schools for a variety of reasons because of building. We also have program needs, which in the area of French, it's created closed schools to out of areas, which I'm sure trustees hear about when people want to go to school, and it's closed because it's home to a French program, and also the ones that I referenced earlier with regard to rural servicing, and that's a reasonable use restriction based on septic capacity at some schools. The area around the north end of Barrie, rings around the north end of Barrie. Certainly, we have a capital plan that we believe is covers a lot of the areas that we continue to see as the needs in the board, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions the presentation of this report.
Thank you very much. There's certainly a lot of information in this report, and when you first start reading it, it's a bit overwhelming, but it does all come together. So are there questions, comments from trustees with respect to this report? Trustee Peacock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I know not too many people around this table like to talk about septic systems. And unfortunately, the 5 schools that are in this capital plan around septic systems happen to all be in the 2 areas that I represent. So I must talk about them. Forest Hill, I'll start with Forest Hill, Madam Chair, and through you to Superintendent Gans. Forest Hill is not only closed because of the septic issue, but it's also closed for programs. So it's a little bit of a double whammy. On top of that, the school's about 208 students over capacity. So I'm just wondering, in terms of the plan moving forward, what is the plan for that particular school, knowing that there is some growth? It's going to be a while, but there is some growth, and we certainly know that this is one school where everybody seems to want to attend, and so the French program's there. It makes it very difficult. We have lots of siblings who can't get in, and all the same issues that every one of you will have in some of your schools. But I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on the plan for that particular school around those items. Thank you.
Superintendent Dance, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Lloyd, to Trustee Peacock. As you mentioned, it is a unique situation. Forest Hill is, of course, the eventual accommodation pressures we see taking place are with regard to the mid or secondary plan. We already see people, as you said, looking to come to this site. This is an area where we are looking at developing a septic system there so that it's an oversized septic system so that we'll be able to accommodate growth in the short and the medium term future before servicing becomes available. That being said, we work with the Ministry of the Environment and their approvals, and that is a process that takes some time. So we anticipate presenting to the Ministry our plan very soon. We have given them and have a pre-consultation meeting set up with them. The approval process for that entity is in the months instead of the weeks, which is creates challenges for short-term solutions, but it is one where we're looking at the development of an overcapacity septic system so that growth can again take place in that location. For trustees around the table, one of the key elements here is that when we apply to put a portable onto a school, because of the class loading, which is the number of students in each class, the Ministry of the Environment has to weigh in on septic service schools before a building permit will be allowed. A building permit is now required before we add the portable. And so when we run into pressures and staffing-wise, adding another primary class, which would be only 20 students, can be the reason why approvals don't take place from the Ministry of the Environment. And that's why the recommendation was to close Forest Hills out of area immediately once we started to run into challenges with the accommodations and that connection to septic capacity. Forest Hill had a 1961 system and it had a 1976 system, and it's a challenge to maintain those. And that, of course, that's, as was referenced earlier, the reason why we are looking at a capital priority, because the Ministry of Education at this point has not recognized this as being something that should be funded separately. And in our board, we have 20 locations, including the Education Center, that are private septic systems. And those are ones that the ministry's solutions sometimes are not the same ones we would like. But in the case of Forest Hill, we certainly recognize the need and the effort that will be required to do an oversized capacity for a septic system, because it's, we want to be able to open its doors again for either out of area or just for the growth that we know will take place in the short term.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have two other questions. I don't know if you want me to do them now or not.
We're on a roll, so
Okay.
why don't you continue?
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair, to Superintendent Dance. So my second question, and again, is the same topic, and it's about Minising. Minising is only closed out of attendance area because of the septic, so it's not an issue of, but it is to some extent, because we still can't put more portables or kids there, but it's another septic issue. So I'm wondering if you could talk to me about that one. And then I have one more, so you might want to just talk about that one too, or you can wait. But the third one would be WRBS.
Certainly, and I'll try to connect both. Each school is in a totally different situation. At Minising, trustees should be aware that we have a connecting link to the Springwater Library, which is adjacent to the Minising School. It is one where the septic capacity has not been reached, but it's one that the Ministry of the Environment has assumed that we are at that stage where we cannot continue to grow. And again, as I have mentioned, when we apply for a building permit, they want to make sure that the septic capacity is there. So an interim step has been to close off the connecting link with the Springwater Library or Community Center adjacent to the Minising School. It is one that we're continuing to work with the Ministry of the Environment and to provide for them data with regard to the system's efficiency, and we foresee doing a further project there to increase its capacity. In Minising specifically, we do not see the opportunity for eventual system connection to a non-private system, but we also know that it's in a different situation than Forest Hill because it has a Best Start program. It has a program that is, if lack of a better term, is a hub for the community, and it's one that we want to continue to have that operation take place there. As the landlords or the center for this, we don't want to have to change that. So until we're able to develop that septic system, we will keep it closed out of area. That being said, if we're able to work with the Ministry of Environment, we will consider that as we go forward. As far as WRBS, which is a school on the Edgar Rugby Road between, I guess, the old Barry Road between Midhurst and Aurelia, it is a school that's become very popular because if I can use the term gentrification of the Horseshoe Valley area, has increased the number of families there, and it's been very popular and it's growing. Its septic system itself is not The issue is the capacity that it's rated for. And the Ministry of the Environment looks at areas now, and they have two approaches. One is called, well, both are called CAS, and that means you're buying land for an attenuation system so that you can, or sorry, not buying land. You have to have additional land available so that your septic system will be able to attenuate or disperse the nitrates and the other minerals that may be measured inside that flow. That is what WR Best is in a situation of, where we have to strategically decide whether we would like to pursue a CAS, which is you're paying people, similar to carbon credits, you're paying the landowners so that you can have the effluent go there untreated. The other option is, and this is why it may be a capital priority, is to purchase land. For trustees who know where not a lot Central Public School is, just a South Calling, but that's an example of a school that has about 18 acres of land, even though it's a school of 350 students, because when its batch reactor septic system was put in, the ministry said we needed to have that much land. It's a wonderful green space. Most schools would be envious for the amount of green space. That is something we see taking place at WR Best as well, simply because we would like to be able to have that open area to either, as the school continues to be popular, to expand, and the septic system be able to accommodate. So different strategies in different schools, but all with the same root, which is in the septic system.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Armstrong, please.
Thank you to you, Chair Lloyd, to Superintendent Vance. The capital plan that we have today, that is of course for this upcoming year, to me is kind of exceptional in that I have not seen before proposals that we bring elementary town in with a secondary panel. So 7 to 12 school is mentioned, and then also under accommodation review committee, that's the program review, accommodation review committee about having sort of like a campus. So that's something very never happened at our board. I don't think it's unusual across the province. So not that I have a real concern or objected to it, but I'm just wondering, especially in ARC, if the closure of an elementary school doesn't take place, how does the campus work out? So I think that that's something that is kind of a complex issue, and I don't know, as far as funding, I know you might mention about consolidation, we qualify for that, but it seems kind of complex, and yet I realize it makes a lot of sense in that area. And then program reviews, I'm surprised that the program review, the way I thought maybe you have to be an ARC when you do something like that. So just want to have a little bit more verbal explanation. I thank you, the report's excellent, thank you for just discussing that, because this is a real change. Typically it's facility issues and program growth, but when we're combining sort of panels in a way, to me the campus, I don't think the staffing is kind of combined in one look, under one principal, but it looks like to me there would be, there'd be one principal for an elementary portion and a secondary portion. So this is kind of unusual, and as a step forward, I think it's a great answer, but we've never done it.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Lloyd, Trustee Armstrong. You're right. Absolutely. The 7 to 12 model is not something we've done. We do have a situation, though, with two schools, two small secondary schools in both Elmville and Stayner, that are unique in the sense that when we look at consistency of practice, they both fall into the same area. Trustees would recognize that Penetanguishene Secondary School was a school about the same size, and the core area of Barrie Central is the same size, around 400 to 500 students. The difference being the capacity of schools around Barrie Central is there, and with the advent of the new school, that is the aspect. Program challenges have been documented both Barrie Central and Penetanguishene, as well as Stayner and Elmville, because of the size of the population. Elmville is 25 kilometers minimum from the next closest secondary school. Stayner's next closest secondary school is arguably, it's either Mount Pines where there is not capacity to take those students, and also Collingwood, which is at capacity. These proposals are to be consistent in the way that we treat schools, and certainly trustees who've been around the table recall that people say that we're against small schools in our board. That's couldn't be further from the case. We believe that viable programming can take place in school in a 7 to 12 context because we're able to do that. In the Elmville situation and in Stayner's situation, they're different solutions. The ARC that's proposed for the Stayner situation is as much driven by the facility condition at Dayton Public School as it is at as a situation to create a 7 to 12. It is a great opportunity to be able to take advantage of what we see as the ministry's desire to see consolidation funding put to good use to create that campus idea in Stayner. In fact, the business case we think is compelling. We'll be awaiting guidelines from the ARC because this could be, although it may not be at first, one of those expedited accommodation reviews. Bing is 93 years old, 7 years away from being on. It has considerable accessibility issues. Staff, Manager Buchan, Senior Planner Clee, myself, and Manager Parker took a tour of Bing just a few weeks ago. I know Trustee Chandler was able to go on a tour of that as well. And there are considerable facility issues in that school. So we would end up with a situation where in Stayner we'd have a campus because Clearview Meadows is directly adjacent to Stayner Collegiate, and we would have the opportunity for 7 to 12 setting there that would hopefully, what we have learned in studies around the province, 7 to 12s, the 7s and 8s are retained at that school. They don't go to other secondary schools when they start at that. Trustees will recall the examples of in Stratford previously. In Elmville, it certainly is one that there's certainly a positive business case in the sense that Coronius Centennial is a very stable population, the elementary school in Elmville, but it's also one that has 7 portables on site right now. We have considerable needs, program needs at Elmville that can be met. We believe there is a business case to be made that will make that sustainable. Both populations would settle around the 600 level, 550 to 600, with grade 7s and 8s inside the buildings, and it would provide tremendous opportunities for those grade 7s and 8s to take advantage of the facilities of the high schools. The human resources side is going to be a departure for the board, but it will be one that hasn't been, certainly other boards are flourishing with 7 to 12 settings that are done for different reasons. In our situation, certainly strategically, we believe this is a solution that preserves small secondary schools while also giving them the sustainability that I know has been a concern with small level populations in the past, as referenced to the Penetang situation and Barry Central. I hope that addresses most of what your concern is.
Thank you. And yeah, that's not so much concern, so I just wanted to make an expansion on it because it is, I just want the members to understand that this is historical and that we've never done this model. Not to say that it's a bad model, I don't mean that at all, I'm just saying it's something that I think is a great solution, and certainly in rural areas to preserve the school communities, it's, I think that we have to be open to that. So thank you for your expansion on the report.
Thank you. Next on the list is Trustee Chandler, please.
Thank you, Chair, and to Superintendent Dance. So I'd like to just speak to the recommendation regarding Bing and the consolidation of the schools. People are already excited in Stayner because when you say that an ARC is happening, I think it's going to close right away. So my question is, I know we have to follow protocol. We have to have the ARC first, and that might not happen until next January, February. And then is it only at that point, whatever happens there, let's assume because the facility it is closed, let's assume, then only then we start speaking about what 7 to 12 looks like. Because what's happening now is I'm getting phone calls and emails because people want to know what that looks like. And I know that it's new, but I think that it would be nice to get to have some information. Your people have some information, these studies you refer to. The comments I'm getting are not so much about concern about Bing, but it's about the mingling of the grade 7s with the high school kids. And they're asking me, is it going to be a separate wing? Is it a school within a school? And I know we can't go there yet because we haven't done the arc on Bing yet. But I need a little help here because I'm getting a lot of information coming at me and questions I want to answer accurately. So I was hoping your people could, because it's new to the board, 7 to 12, they don't seem to be as concerned as much about the academics, the socialization, the social part of it. So that's my question.
Thank you, through you, Chair Lloyd, Trustee Chandler. That is certainly what the intention of the ARC would be, but it's certainly one also that we can bring forward with studies and reference those in the coming months so that people have a better handle, because it won't just be one community, it will be the other community. And it is a departure for our board, but we can certainly compile some of the literature so that people can see it. It is a concept that's still fluid at this point, simply because of the realities. At both of the two proposed solutions, we're looking at roughly 100 students in grade 7 and 8 to be part of that scenario, or those scenarios. So it will be one that, will it be a principal with 2 vice principals? Will it be two separate schools with 2 separate principals and admin staff? That has not been determined. We are certainly looking at what has been successful around the province and trying to match those, and certainly the community will have some input into some of this. Just as a point of interest, I recall when Clearview Meadows was being built and people wanted to know about the influence of the high school being so close to them, and it was one that I think it was a former superintendent, Joan Fuller, who said, they're your kids, just a couple of years older. That's very true, but it's also one that we have to cross that sensitivity boundary with people to realize that the proximity of the elementary school to the secondary school is a big positive as well, and that may happen. Design has not taken place yet. It is one that we see as taking place with some input from the community, but it will be one that in order to accommodate or reach where we need to go with the specific funding model we're looking at, the school capital consolidation, it would work very well for everybody if we're able to start on that arc next year and then be able to come to that point. I have to also draw everybody's attention that sometimes when you complete an arc, the school doesn't close immediately. In Arroyo, we didn't close the schools. Another one had come up before this evening about school not closing and timing taking place. We would want to make sure that we have the capital funding in place for the changeover between these locations. But we do need to have a solution at Bing, and the facility itself right now does not either lean towards accessibility, or also because of the challenges we've had with the facility with the library, for example, which I think you're aware of, where we had to close a wing of the library because of the situation of the building, other things like that. So it is one that is imminent, but we need to move along with an idea of including the community in those discussions.
Just to follow up, Superintendent Dance, that I guess people are looking for information on 7 to 12 schools. What are they? Where are they? So maybe we could have a conversation of where I can direct people. Not that it's going to happen, but sometimes just giving them information calms people down.
Thank you, and we'll share those with both communities.
I do believe too, our neighboring board, Blue Water, has a number of 7 to 12 models, and Thames Valley has a number of them as well, and they are working in smaller communities. So the information is available online, and there are groups out there. Dr. Wallace?
Through you, Madam Chair, we most certainly will bring information forward, because I think it's knowing really helps the community, so by all means. Also, keep in mind that we have to review our policy on the accommodation review once we get the guidelines, and we have yet to get the guidelines. We've been waiting since January, when supposedly they were coming. So just to make sure your communities understand that we would not start an accommodation review until we get our new guidelines. Then we will be bringing forward to the trustee table what those changes could look like, looking for approval from this table, and only then would we then start to set up
the time frame in which we would then start to take a look at these. So keep in mind that this could be quicker or slower depending on delays that of getting this further information. So, but we'll definitely get, if that's what you're hearing from people, there's absolutely some great examples out there that we can share.
Thank you, and Trustee Law, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, my question was just answered.
Okay, great, good. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. There are a number of recommendations contained within this report. There's 11, in fact. So I'm just wondering at this point in time, is there a mover who would like to move all 11 recommendations contained within this report and second it? Trustee Beacock. Is there a seconder? Okay, Trustee Maney, thank you. So bear with me because I am required to read these. Okay, that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve an attendance area review to be undertaken commencing in the fall of 2015 in the Southwest Elementary Review area that includes Angus, Morris Elementary School, and Pine River Elementary School, as set out in report number BF-D7 Capital Plan 2014 dated March 4th, 2015. Number 2, that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend the board approve an accommodation review committee in the Northwest Elementary Secondary Planning areas that include Bing Public School, Clearview Meadows Elementary School, and Stainer Collegiate Institute, following the revised board pupil accommodation review policy aligned with the new revised provincial pupil accommodation guidelines as set out in report number BF-D7 Capital Plan 2014 dated March 4th, 2015. 3, that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve a program review be undertaken commencing in the fall of 2015 in the Southeast Elementary Planning Review area that includes Radford Public School and WHJ Elementary School as set out in report number BF-D7 Capital Plan 2014 dated March 4th, 2015. Number 4, that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve a program review be undertaken commencing in the fall of 2015 in the North Secondary and Central Elementary Planning Review areas that include Elmville District High School and Heronius Centennial Elementary School as set out in report number BF-D7 Capital Plan 2014 dated March 4th, 2015. Number 5, the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve the schools accommodating French immersion and extended French as a second language to be closed to new out-of-area students as set out in report number BF-D7 Capital Plan 2014 dated March 4th, 2015. 6, that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve the pursuit of facility partnership opportunities for the recommended capital priorities as set out in report number BF-D7 Capital Plan 2014 dated March 4th, 2015. Number 7, that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board deem property surplus to the board's needs as set out in report number BF-D7 Capital Plan 2014 dated March 4th, 2015. 8, that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve holding schools and new schools be closed to new out-of-area students as set out in report number BF-D7 Capital Plan 2014 dated March 4th, 2015. Number 9, that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve schools serviced by a private septic system that are constrained by the Ministry of Environment's reasonable use policy are closed to out-of-area students as set out in report number BF-D7 Capital Plan 2014 dated March 4th, 2015. Number 10, the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve the capital priority project list as set out in report number BF-D7 Capital Plan 2014 dated March 4th, 2015. And number 11, that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve the capital plan as set out in report number BF-D7 Capital Plan 2014 dated March 4th, 2015. So those motions have been moved as a group and seconded as a group. They've all been read. So is there any further questions or comments at this time? Okay, so I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Okay, that takes us to our last item for decision, which is the naming of the new Aurelia Secondary School, and that would be Superintendent Sloan, please.
Thank you, Chair Lloyd, and just by way of background for trustees, this opportunity came about as a result of the closure of Park Street Collegiate and amalgamation, as mentioned earlier in the proceedings this evening, where we have the students and staff housed temporarily at the current OD's CVI site, which has been temporarily named OD Park. So the committee was established to look at naming the new school. It's all part of the excitement of a new school opening. As the report indicates, the committee membership is indicated there, and also the process where many submissions were invited and over 85 submissions were received and reviewed by the committee. And as the report indicates, the unanimous and only recommended for this new school is really a secondary school. So I'm pleased to respond to any questions that may result.
Anybody have any questions? Trustee Armstrong, please.
I'm sorry, I gotta ask this one. It is a privilege to approve a name for a school because it's quite historical. I mean, as stated, we have schools that could be in existence for over 93 years. So this is very important. It has come to the occasion of this board that we have had the number one choice not chosen, that we chose number two for an elementary school, I believe, in Barrie some years ago. So I have to ask this question. Is the committee going to meet again if we don't vote in favor of their one and only recommendation to come up with a number two choice?
Through the chair, I guess when I say we, I guess I was a part of it. I guess the committee would resume its deliberations in that event. But there was two people on the trustees that were part of that committee that you wish to weigh in on that as well, Trustee Beatock and Trustee Lloyd.
I think, I know Trustee Beatock and I were both there, and I have to commend this group of people because it was decided that this whole process would be done by consensus. So when you start with 87 names and you bring it down to one, with this many people through consensus, that is a recognizable achievement. And I think one of the things that this group felt was that this was an important school to the city. They wanted, and I will also congratulate the students that were on this committee. They spoke very well. They were very clear and articulate. They went back to the school for feedback on names as we downsized the names. The students wanted a name that was easily recognizable. When they went somewhere, people knew where they were from, that identified the community. They wanted also to recognize the fact that two schools that closed, Park Street and OD, were the two original Aurelia high schools, OD being the first one. And the names that they whittled down, they didn't really feel that they could bring them forward. And so they didn't want to put them forward. So I said that I would speak to that at this table, just to let you know how strongly they felt about the name. And they felt, considering we had an MSS and a PSS and a Collingwood High School and a Bradford High School, that this name would be fitting in with many of our other high schools in the community. So it was a great committee. They worked very efficiently, and I will tell you that there were people there that came with very pointed agendas to start with and very strong opinions on what the school should be. And after a lot of discussion and feedback and listening to others, people were quite willing to compromise and to come to this. So it was by consensus, and this was the name that they felt best represented the community. And so hopefully that addresses any concerns as to why there wasn't a second and a third name, but they didn't feel there were names worthy of being recommended for the second and third. And so that's why they chose not to do it. So Trustee Beatock may want to add more. He was there as well. So I do want to speak to one other matter, though, before we do the motion, and it's sort of difficult when I'm chairing to do this, but one of the 87 names, a great majority of those names recommended individuals from the community who were still alive and had made a significant, meaningful contribution, or who had passed away, who had a historical connection to the school, such as Dr. Ryder, who had donated the land where the school was being built originally when Park Street was built, Gordon Lightfoot, Don Tapska, who was still a member of the technology world and quite well recognized. There were a number of Sage Hale. So anyway, the committee was very strong in their recommendation that they were hoping that within the school could somehow recognize some of those individuals.
They felt they were worthy individuals, and this name, while they decided not to name it after an individual, they were hoping that inside the school we could recognize those individuals somehow. So by whether a plaque being called the Gordon Lightfoot Music Room, or the Don Hadcock Science Wing, or Dr. Reiner Science Wing, something like that. So I had said that, although they debated whether to put it in the report or not, and we had sort of come to the suggestion that it really wasn't part of the report, but I would hope that maybe we can consider this as we move forward with the opening of the school, because it was very, very important to the naming committee that some of these individuals be recognized somehow within the school as it moves forward. So I had indicated I would bring those feelings forward on behalf of the group that was there, and I hope as we move forward we can come up with some solution to recognize those individuals, because there were a lot of names and it was a very hard process to cut out all the names and just get down to one name as a recommendation. So that's it. I'd be very happy to move this recommendation. If somebody would be happy to second it. Thank you. Trustee Schiller, that would be great. Thank you. So the recommendation before us is that the Business and Facilities Standing Committee recommend that the board approve the new Aurelia Secondary School as named the new Aurelia Secondary School effective September 1st, 2015, as set out in report number BFD8, naming of the new Aurelia Secondary School, dated March 4th, 2015. Trustee Peacock? Okay. I moved it. Trustee Schilling seconded it.
That's fine.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? And thank you. That carries. So, we are moving through the agenda, folks. Thank you. We have two items. First is the kilometrage rate, reimbursement rate, and that's Superintendent Jeff's place.
Thanks, Chair Lloyd, through you. Tonight, you have an informational report before you just regarding kilometrage rate, and as a result in decline in gas prices, a request was made to bring a report forward. And speaking with the chair of the committee, I think collectively we felt that tabling the May 16, 2012 report, which has been included as Appendix A, that had a few recommendations associated with it, and those recommendations, as the report suggests, after some lengthy discussion back in May of 2012, were not approved. But the report's here for your information, and I'd certainly be happy to take any questions.
Unfortunately, the reduction in gas prices was very short-lived because it was back up to 107.9 today. So, any questions or comments with respect to this report? Trustee Clements, please.
Just a quick question through the chair to Jeff. It does say at the end there's reasons to consider reduction in the current rate of reimbursement. So is there a course of action we should be taking?
Through the chair, sorry, you'll have to... If you
the last paragraph on the current says, the last line says there is a reason to consider a reduction in the current rate of reimbursement.
I believe that's on the May 16, 2012 report?
No, it's in the current.
Current status of the May 20...
Last paragraph, last line.
Yeah, that is a report, the previous report that we had from the board, that was something that staff had considered recommending, and we had a lengthy discussion about it, and so that was not acted upon at the time after a lot of discussion. Okay, any other questions with respect to this report? Okay, seeing none, thank you. And then number 2 is the partnership update for New Alcoa South Public School, Victoria Harbour Elementary School Addition, and Archer Cumberland Beach Replacement School, and that's Superintendent Sloan, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Lloyd, I bring this report as an update on our partnership pursuit policy, and as trustees may recall, with the Victoria Harbour Elementary School partnership pursuit, we went through that process formally as a result of the decision of the ARC for the Wabashing, Port Manicola, and Victoria Harbour Elementary Schools at the time. But at that time, of course, we didn't have the capital funding that we have recently received. And in fact, in response to the capital funding we received for these 3 schools, we have proceeded with a process to seek partnerships through an RFP, request for proposal process. There was no uptake on the Archery at Cumberland. project or the Victoria Harbour project. We did have a response that we're in the process of, we finished analyzing it, and we are looking to meet with the prospective proponents, and if a partnership opportunity emerges there, then we will bring a more detailed report to the trustees at that time. I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you very much. Trustee Armstrong, please.
Thank you, through you to Superintendent Sloan. In regards to that current status, the New Alcona South Public School, do you believe that that time may be occurring before June of this year, or when do you perceive that investigation and possible report recommendation, when do you think that would come forward?
It's currently very much on our immediate horizon to have that conversation, and any subsequent conversations that may emerge will be certainly within the next 6 to 8 weeks, I would imagine.
Thank you. Are any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for that report. That takes us to correspondence. We have nil. Are there any other matters at this time? Okay, there are none. Are any notices of motion for the next meeting? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for everyone. We've got a lot of work done tonight, and it is 9:05, so congratulations. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Trustee Peacock, Trustee Locke, thank you. Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Safe travels home, everyone.